72% of entrepreneurs suffer with mental health, and 37% of entrepreneurs suffer from anxiety. Today, I'm chatting with Anna Mathur, author and psychotherapist, about those areas, about anxiety, its root causes, and how to deal with it and move forward, among many other things. Anna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I've been really looking forward to this.
I know it's been a long time coming.
It has.
And congratulations on your most recent book. I know it's been out a while now, The
Yeah.
Uncomfortable Truths, but when did you release that one?
So that was out in August, and it's just all about life's uncomfortable truths. You know, the fact that bad things happen, some people won't like us, will fail, and about becoming more comfortable with them, being the key to actually just being able to live more confidently and authentically. So it's been out for a little while.
And you're working on another one now as well, aren't you? I saw that you've got one on pre-order. What's the one that's on pre-order?
So that's called the Good Decision Diary, and it's just about being able to make better decisions more of the time and finding compassion for the times that we just walk straight into bad decisions, knowing that we're going to make them. It's looking at self-sabotage. It's looking at just being a bit more human in the goals that we set ourselves, and seeing growth as kind of like a bumpy line rather than something straight and sleek and
Organized.
that's fun. Yeah.
And Anna, before we get into, I mean, like I said, we're going to be talking about anxiety, overwhelm, a couple of different things and tools and ways that you can, as a business founder, try and move past that and move through it. I suppose I don't know whether you're able to move past it. But Anna, can you share for those listening a little bit about your background and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so I'm a psychotherapist, historically worked in kind of clinical settings, GP surgeries, private practices, that kind of thing, and loved it. And then I think it was after having my second child, I went on Instagram because I was moving house into a new build. So I was like, oh, I don't know how to decorate it. So I got loads of inspiration for like paint colors and things. And that's where I put my screenshots of carpet samples so as not to annoy my friends anymore over WhatsApp. And then after I decorated the house and that was boring, I started sharing little bits about mental health on Instagram, which was a little bit of back then, 8 years ago, was a bit of a brave thing to do as a therapist, because you were meant to be very much a blank slate in a room with box tissues, another chair, and a couple of chairs. So I wasn't sure whether I was doing something naughty, and applying my own story really to the therapeutic insights that I have. And that's kind of where things just grew from there. And there wasn't really a plan. I never really imagined that I would have written so many books
Yeah.
or,
Do you
done.
have 5 now? Is it 5 books?
So I have 5, and that's the next one is my 6th.
Wow.
So I'm very entrepreneurial and I always have been. So it's been really fun actually turning this into a job. I didn't know that it could be, but I remember spending so much time on Instagram, my husband being like, this is ridiculous. You're going to need a little bit of childcare or some nursery time. And yet you're not kind of earning anything as you do this. It was, I was doing it as a passion project, but I started realizing that actually I needed a bit of childcare if I was going to start keep putting so much stuff out there for people. So I launched a course called the Nice Girl course, and it was a digital download. And that was the first thing really that enabled me to actually find a bit of balance in the fact that I was putting so much time and energy into sharing this stuff on Instagram. So it kind of evolved from there. That
And
I share and in any which way, podcasts, writing, articles, press, radio, anything, just to kind of get these thoughts and warm words out there for people.
And you work obviously you work with one-to-one with clients as
Yeah.
well, and we'll talk a little bit more about how people can find you and how they can work with you later on. But I wanted to talk with you about a couple of things really. And first off, I suppose it would be about that imposter syndrome and self-doubt when launching a business, or not even launching, but when you're running a business. And you have one of your books, Know Your Worth, which talks about the cost of low self-esteem and how it can hold you back and that kind of thing. What are some practical steps that entrepreneurs can use, and your tips to help move past that point, that kind of self-doubt and imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so I think it's first of all, it's just really normal to to worry. It's really normal to think, actually, do I fully embody this person that I am throwing out there into the world? And I think ultimately that is not the entirety of us, right? I can stand on a platform and speak to a law firm about something, and I can feel like an absolute imposter because I know that I'm also the girl who like cried over the fact that the cereal fell out of the cupboard this morning, or I shouted at my kids at weekends, or actually, I'm there's a big part of my work that I don't actually know how to navigate. So we can feel like an imposter, but I think the thing is to recognize that all those things are true. We're so many different parts. We have so many different roles. We wear so many different hats. And I think sometimes we can question whether that is authentic, right? Because it really conflicts. That me standing up there, looking really smart and slick, talking to a load of lawyers is very conflicting to the me of the hormonal me that cried over the cereal box, right, and shouted at her kids. It's very conflicting. Therefore, I'm an imposter. I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be making out that I'm this person. When actually, if we can just see ourselves as like a pie chart with all of these different slices, I am the corporate speaker. I am the, slightly socially awkward, whatever. And I'm all of those people. I'm
Mm.
all of those in the one. And they might seem contradicting, but they all sit there within us, and it doesn't mean that one is inauthentic because it kind of somehow jars with the other. And I think that's really helpful to know about imposter syndrome, is that you are the business owner and you are the person that, disobeys the sat nav and gets lost all the time, and feels very incompetent when it comes to directions. And that is okay to be all of these different parts. And yeah, that doubt doesn't disqualify you. That conflicting part of you doesn't mean that it's not real. We are just all of those pieces. So identifying your inner critic is really helpful. Some people like naming it and recognizing that actually that voice that says, I shouldn't be doing this, there are people out there that are better than me, I'm just going to fail. That voice is fear. It's not truth. I think sometimes we can give it so much power because we feel like it's kind of talking at us, and it can feel very authoritative, very confident, when actually just thinking, you know what, this inner critic called Dave, sorry, Dave, it's not truth. It's just fear. This is just fear. So then the next tip is then to anchor yourself into the truth. Think, what is the truth here? Oh, it's going to fail. No, it might fail. Statistically, it might fail. It's not going to fail. That's not truth. That's fear speaking. I don't deserve to be doing this. Okay, that sounds like a very mean kind of old uncle or a teacher that wasn't very good or kind. Sometimes it's thinking, what does this voice actually sound like? Who does it sound like? Recognizing that it isn't you, it's fear. So anchoring yourself in the truth of that, and just being okay to start things messily, that
Yeah.
actually start things humanly, to just put things out there and not have to do it all perfectly before you present yourself or your product or your business to the world, because there's a real human behind it and in it, in your heart.
And you talk about the cost of low self-esteem in your book, Know Your Truth, and how might this show up specifically in business? And what are the first kind of warning signs that female founders should watch out for?
Such a good question, is how does low self-esteem show up in business? Because we might be so aware of how it shows up in our relationships and how it shows up in our inner dialogue, but what does it look like in business? So I think it might look like saying yes when you actually mean no. Saying yes to taking on a client when actually they're not the kind of client that aligns with what you want to do. Maybe you just didn't gel with them in the first meeting that you had, but you're going to say yes because, you're fearful that maybe this is letting go of business that perhaps might not come around in another way. So yes, saying yes when you mean no. Another way it might show up is undercharging, not charging enough, because again, fear comes in of, if I charge actually what people are saying I'm worth, or what my business coach says I'm worth, then what if people don't see my worth? And often it's actually the fact that we don't see our worth. It's not, because we can tend to kind of up prices and find that people will pay them. So maybe other people see our worth more than we do. It might be the over delivering. It might feel somehow you have to offer more to give value for what someone is giving you in financial terms. So it's that over delivering. It might be that you're obsessing over how your business is seen. you're caught up in the detail rather than actually, is what I'm putting out aligning with where I'm at, or what I want for my business, or what the heart of my business is. And a good way to kind of just question is this decision, is this response, is this price point, is it driven by fear, or is it driven by values? Is it driven by heart? And sometimes that can be really good at just kind of like cutting through where that low self-esteem might be impacting the decisions that you're making.
And possibly, I think, by not dealing with something as well. I've recently been working with the brand, and they've had some internal staffing issues. And actually, two brands I've been working with, and they've delayed the decision, delayed the conversation. So for such a long period of time, it's now become this real mountain. It's a real difficult thing for them to kind of deal with and overcome. Does that come from a self-esteem point of view, do you think, as well?
Yeah, because I think actually the less confidence we have in ourselves, the more we give that power to the outcomes of conversations and that we have. So it might be that actually I'm so worried about how I'm going to articulate myself, or I'm so worried how this might be received, that what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kick the can down the road and not say anything at all, bury my head in the sand. And we know that actually what tends to happen is that problem doesn't just go away. It becomes a little bit more complicated, or it kind of grows, doesn't it? So actually, if you have confidence in the fact that underneath it all, you're a good person trying to do a good thing, then actually that is what you can come back to. No matter whether it goes off piece, the conversation doesn't go as you wanted, there are further conversations that need to happen, maybe the outcome isn't what you hoped, that you can go back to this kind of sense of esteem, the sense of confidence in the fact that you did something that was aligned with your business or your values, and that becomes the anchor, so that if it all goes wrong, it's not saying that I am wrong, I shouldn't have done that, I failed at that. It's saying, oh yeah, that didn't go so well, but I know that I did the right thing. So it's having confidence in that, and then going ahead regardless and doing it gently and wisely, but doing it all the same.
And as a founder, and a lot of people that I work with, a lot of people that are listening are women, and are maybe mothers as well. And when you're managing a business, you're managing a family, and whether you're managing a family or not, regardless, managing a business, there's a lot of place to spin, which can deal to the kind of feeling of overwhelm, and that anxiety as well, and just freezing and not really moving. How can people reduce the feeling of overwhelm, face the anxiety, and move forward?
Okay, so I think it's recognizing that overwhelm comes because we're at or beyond our capacity. And either we need to then think, okay, what is the call upon my capacity and my resource, whether it's time, energy, headspace, physical energy? What is that call on my capacity that is beyond the level that I can physically, mentally, emotionally give? And either what we have to do is readdress that call on our capacity, and maybe we have to think, you know what, I need to delegate that, or actually I'm going to have to turn that down, as painful as that might be, because I'm not going to be able to do a good job. And the cost behind the scenes of plowing on and pushing through tends to be burnout, and that is just can be so debilitating that you get to a point, and I found having experienced burnout, where you literally physically, mentally can't. It's not about decision, you grind to a halt. Okay, so whilst you can make the decision to think, actually, this is too much, and knowing your signs, what does that look like for you? Does it feel like resentment? Actually, I'm doing this, but I'm doing it resentfully. Does it feel like actually with your family or your relationships, your friendships, you're actually just being really snappy and distant and withdrawn because you're just done. You're done in, and you've got nothing left to give. You've got nothing left to pour into the other things in your life that are really meaningful. So notice what your little red flags are for overwhelm. One of mine is if I get a message or a phone call off a friend or someone that I care about, it just feels like another thing on the to-do list. It just feels like a call upon my energy that I cannot and do not have time for, and then I feel guilty. And so it's knowing what your little flags are, and knowing that actually feeling overwhelmed, it's not failure, it's not lack of resilience, it's just that you're giving more than you have. So yes, either you have to reduce the demand, or you have to find ways to resource yourself. So if you're frazzled, normally it's rest that you need. And this is the frustrating thing, is that rest is the antidote to burnout. Slowing down is the antidote to overwhelm. And it might be, how do I rest? How do I slow down when life is just so full and fast? Maybe it's that you have to put a boundary in place. Maybe you think, actually, I'm going to, and I've got this app block app that's changed my life, right? Because I cannot go on my Instagram after a certain time or before I literally cannot, it will not let me.
But then I override it.
Oh, can you override it? So with this app block thing, you cannot, it's an actual app block. It's not on the on my iPhone. I could override that. That just did nothing for me.
What's the one you have?
So it's called app block.
Okay.
And you can't undo it. So you're done. Like, you cannot come 8:30 in the evening. That's it. I cannot get on my email, and I cannot get on my Instagram. And I think, it's recognizing that there are so many things that add to the overwhelm that we don't actually realize are adding to the overwhelm, and how we interact with the digital world is often one of them. Because, when we feel overwhelmed, we can tend to go to the busiest place in the whole world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it feels distracting. If we're feeling frozen and a bit stifled by all the things we have to do, we can just, kind of procrastinate. And I think what we don't realize is the enormity of the energy it takes for our brain to process all of that stuff that we're consuming. So we think, oh, it's fine, I'm just looking at a funny dog, or I'm just reading the story of someone else's business, when actually your brain is then having to process that, a bit like eating a massive Sunday lunch, right? There's a part of you that has to process all of that incoming information. You might know that it doesn't mean that much, but your brain still has to process, where am I going to store this? What am I going to do with it? So I think sometimes it's even recognizing that there are so many things that add to burnout. So how might you make a tweak, read a book, instead of going on social media, that your body responds very differently to that. It might be that actually you need to physically slow down your movement, because we can find ourselves tearing, even if we're working at home, we can find ourselves running between rooms. There just feels like there's so much to do that we're kind of in this poised, braced state. So sometimes even as simple as, I'm going to walk slower. I am going to compartmentalize what I'm doing, because, again, multitasking feels like an absolute win when it comes to productivity, but it is draining, like double draining on our battery, because we can't do 10 things at once. It might feel like it, it might look like it, but our brain is constantly shifting gear, and that takes an enormous amount of mental energy. And mental energy and physical energy are so tied together. So when we feel physically flawed and we're like, I don't understand, I've not really I've done like 4,000 steps today, 1,000 steps. How am I so tired? And it's because all of this switching tasks, this rushing around, this sitting in that stressed position, it is completely draining. So think, what can I do that feels restful for me? What can I do to support my nervous system? Is it taking some deep breaths? Is it getting the opposite of what I've had too much of? So if you've had a lot of digital input, nature that's the antidote. If you've had a lot of noise and your work is quite noisy, maybe you've got the music on, maybe you've got your Zoom on, maybe you've got your phone pinging and your Etsy going off. How can I literally just step away from the noise to soothe that of what I've had too much of, to get the antidote? So it's the little micro things as well, those micro moments, those pauses, sensory deprivation, literally putting your hands over your eyes and just having a moment of not having sensory input. These things are really helpful to prevent overwhelm leaning into burnout. But listen to overwhelm. It is telling you something to push through and push on. Should only be something that we do in emergencies. We need to lean into it and listen to it. Otherwise, we risk that burnout, or we grind to a halt, and everything has to grind to a halt, and that is not pretty.
And from an anxiety point of view, would you say that is a lot of what you've talked about there is the same for when you're feeling anxious?
Yeah, because we know that when we feel anxious, we're often running ahead to the worst case scenario. We're feeling really fearful. We're feeling really scared. We're feeling really activated. We're ruminating. We're creating entire stories in our minds, and our body is responding. Because the thing with anxiety is your body doesn't know what's real or imagined. So you're getting the adrenaline, you're getting the cortisol anyway. The more burnt out and overwhelmed you are, the less able you are to have that lovely coaching voice that says back to yourself, it's okay. it's all right, we can sort through this, or that thing's probably not going to happen. The thing is with anxiety, when you're ruminating, when you're going off down that kind of worst case scenario track, your body doesn't know what is happening and what is actually being imagined. So it's going to have to respond anyway, which is why we get kind of the fast heart rate, and we feel tense, and we feel kind of super hyper vigilant. We feel really kind of jittery. And when we're overwhelmed, we're less able to do that kind coaching voice that says, it's okay, take a deep breath. It's probably not going to happen. It's just an email that's popped in. It's not a bear that's chasing you. And we're less able to do that when we're overwhelmed because we are far more reactive. We're already in that braced position. So addressing overwhelm is also a way to get some of that extra headspace to navigate those anxious thoughts. Rest takes you out of that stress position. And then you're more likely to be able to kind of, just calm those anxious thoughts and bring your mind, drag it back from an unknown future and all those horrible stories to what is actually going on in front of you, which is normally a lot less scary than our brain likes to account.
In terms of like daily habits, to try and introduce if you're feeling that way, like I said, whether they're the 5 minute moments, what are things that you recommend to people?
I recommend taking like a 3-meal approach, especially if you're working at home and you're not kind of you haven't got those transition points of like getting out for a walk or being in the car and having some quiet to kind of punctuate the beginning and end of your day. Think of it as like meals. So 3 meals a day. You take a point in the morning. What can you do in the morning that somehow feeds and grounds you? It might be just doing a lap around the block before you sit at your desk to mark the beginning of the day and having a chat with a friend or a family member. What might you do at lunch? Maybe you just want to put a little 5-minute guided meditation on. Just close your eyes and switch off from the screens for 5 minutes. Maybe you just want to sit by a window and have a look out at the treetops, or just stand outside with a cup of tea. What can you do that will feed, fuel, and ground you? Because that enables you then to feel a little bit more present, which will address any anxiety. But these are also ways to kind of counteract some of those feelings of overwhelm. And again, in the evening, what feels nourishing? I don't want to be too prescriptive, because actually what feels nourishing to me might look very different to what feels nourishing and grounding to you. But just thinking what those little touch points for 5-15 minutes a day, longer if you've got it, ideally, always good, where you can just actually honor the fact that you're a human with limited resources, and like that thirsty pot plant on your shelf could really do with not your shelf, Nicole. That pot plant behind you, whether it's real or not real, is looking very healthy, but I've got a few wilting ones that could actually do with a bit of love and attention. And it might be even actually that you just need a big glass of water. Because a thirsty body, a dehydrated body, is actually a distressed body. So you're less likely to be able to respond to that email or tackle that creative problem when you're thirsty, because your body is like, I'm not okay here. My basic need has not been met. So just having those touch points in the day where you check in with yourself and you think, what would nurture me somehow and resource me somehow?
And in your book, The Uncomfortable Truths, you talk about 10 fears, and there are 4 in particular that I think will particularly resonate with founders that might be holding them back, or that they might be experiencing. Some of it I think we've touched on already, but the 4 that I think personally would be, I'm going to fail. I can't be fully present all the time. I'm not good enough. And some people don't like me. Taking each one, how can people face those particular fears?
Oh, I love the ones that you've chosen. I'm going to fail. So actually, if we can just become a little bit more comfortable with the fact that in life, in business, in relationships, in everything that we try and approach every single day, we will fail. Fundamentally, we will fail. It's going to happen. Like, we can't avoid it. And I think what happens is when this becomes such a scary thing, is that failing is linked to our identity. It's linked to how we see ourselves. It basically is, instead of I failed, it is this big shaming statement of I am a failure. Failing doesn't mean that you're a failure. Something not going how you planned it would do with a business launch doesn't mean that you inherently in and of yourself are a failure. And I think this is often where we need to kind of reframe it somehow. I failed and I'm a failure are 2 very, very different things to say to myself. One is maybe just data, fact. that didn't go well. That failed. I failed at that. The other, I am a failure because this didn't go so well. That's a massive statement that is going to chip away at your self-esteem, your confidence, your desire to even approach that thing again. It has very, very high stakes and high costs. Like, imagine saying to someone, if I was to keep saying to my kid, you're a failure, you're a failure, you're a failure. Like, what are they going to start believing about themselves? It becomes embedded. Whereas actually, oh dear, that didn't go so well, or oh, you didn't get that maths question right, oh, that one, that's very, very different. So it's thinking about the language and recognizing failure is data, really. It's a human inevitability. We are going to fail at stuff, especially the more you try with business, the more you're going to fail. Yeah. And the people that we look up to, my goodness, are going to be the ones with the stories of failure. But the difference often between someone that fails at something and someone, that is absolutely succeeding is that they didn't experience their failure as a massive statement of who they are. So it gives them the license then to be like, oh, that didn't work. Right. Let's move on. What can I learn from that? What can I do next? So I think, seeing failure as data, asking yourself, what is this going to teach me? And expecting failure as part of growth and knowing that it is not who you are. It's just an outcome of that thing that is an invitation to learn from it. And that finds us more likely to get up and crack on, having gathered some extra data. Yeah.
To the next failure, the next thing.
Absolutely.
Next success. And what about, and then I can't be fully present all the time.
Yeah, so I think this is one that especially speaks to the parents and business owners, or those in, relationships, and juggling a business. And it's that I've got to be present all the time. I've got to be really present in my life. I've got to really just, really live it. And I've got to really be present in all my relationships and give them everything. And actually, it's just, we can't be fully present all the time. Our mind is going to be, thinking about work when we're on the sofa, because that's how our brains work. Some of us, we've got really creative brains and we get a lot of joy from it. And yes, it's good to have boundaries, and yes, it's good to slow down. But sometimes I think it is just acknowledging that is our brains are navigating lots of different things and we're spinning lots of plates, and it's okay to not be present all the time. You're human. And actually, if we were fully present all the time, I don't even think monks are fully present all the time. Even there, I think that's something you have to practice. Nothing would get done. Nothing would get created. Nothing would get, it just wouldn't, that no logistics would get addressed. It would just be absolute chaos. So I think, there is a big call on social media to be present all the time, when actually it's just not humanly possible to have your brain focused exactly where you are all the time. So to remove the pressure and just sometimes, it's the mindfulness is really wonderful. And knowing that actually you are present all the time because you're physically where you are all the time. It's just your mind that may well not be there. And it's just normal. But noticing sometimes when you would like to return to presence, it's just thinking, actually, this is where I am. This is especially good with anxiety, that has a chance to run ahead, and fear with work, worry with work. How's this going to go? How's that being received right now? How are people responding to this launch that I've just done? You know what? This is where I am. I'm here right now. I can't know the future. I can only just be where I am. So sometimes it is a case of kind of ushering that anxious spiral back to where you are, to that place of safety and presence again.
Is part of it about what you can control as well, and what's within your control, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes I think a lot of the fear and anxiety that we have are around things that we cannot control at all. And I think we can really, really struggle with the unpredictability and uncertainty. And a little mantra that I love, that I used a lot in the pandemic actually, was I will cross that bridge if I get to it. The amount of emotional, psychological energy you might put into, right, I'm working on this part of my business. What happens if this happens? What if that happens? What if someone says this? What if my colleague doesn't actually like this idea of mine? It's all the what if, what ifs. Just saying to yourself, I will cross that bridge if I get to it. It's a reminder that so many of the bridges that we feared being faced with, we've never actually had to face. Actually, often it's the things that we never really thought up, isn't it? And yeah, you've crossed so many bridges in your life, in your work, in your business, that you never could have preempted. And look, here you are right
Yeah.
now, having crossed all of them. Maybe you're standing in the middle of one, but that's okay. You'll come across that one too. So, I think that is a really good reminder when you're going down the what if route.
And we might have touched on some of this with the imposter syndrome conversation, but what about the fear of I'm not good enough?
So I think, do you know what? Ultimately, we're never going to be good enough for the demands and pressures and expectations that A, we hold for ourselves, and B, that our culture often pushes upon us. And I think there is something very liberating in realizing that I'm never going to be good enough to meet those standards. So actually, what I just work with where I'm at and doing the best that I can. And I think addressing self-talk. So often that pressure is internal, isn't it? So thinking, how would I respond to a friend or a colleague or someone else, another business owner, if they were saying, I'm not good enough, this isn't good enough, look at what so-and-so's doing. And actually comparison can really fuel this, right? That feeling of
Yeah.
not being good enough, because we're looking left and right, we're seeing other people thriving. And I will say, as a therapist, I really get to see behind the scenes. And I will see that if someone is really thriving in one area of their life, either they have a lot of resource to put into a lot of support to prop them up, or there is another area of their life that is taking the flack, that is taking the cost. So we can't be thriving in business and in our social lives and in our parenting and in our friendships and relationships. We just cannot be getting 100% in all of them. So I will say that if someone, if you're comparing yourself to someone that is absolutely smashing it, there is resource, either a lot of resource being plowed into it, or there's another area of their life that is probably not getting the look in. So I think
And
it's
everyone
just,
will be at different stages, like you said.
yeah.
That
Oh,
expression, compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20 or whatever it is, you know.
the learning and the failing that they've done along the way to get there. Yeah,
And
really helpful.
what about the fear of some people don't like me?
So this is something that I myself and so many of my clients, so many of my friends have battled with, this sense that someone doesn't like what I'm doing, someone has got this opinion, someone doesn't like me, someone doesn't like my product, and actually that becomes it. We kind of really zero in on those, don't we? And they can suddenly hold a huge amount of power. And I think the most amazing freedom that we can find for ourselves is actually just coming to terms with the fact that some people just won't, for
Yeah.
reasons completely outside of our control. Or maybe it's envy, or maybe it's the fact that that is unfamiliar to them, or maybe it's the fact that they feel uncomfortable with where they're at, so they find it uncomfortable to see other people thriving and just want to pull it down. There are so many reasons that people might not like us or what we're doing. And ultimately, the vast majority of those have absolutely nothing to do with us at all. And in the book, I talk about this friend I had at university, and she just did not like me, and I did not know why. And I was doing everything in my power to make her like me, going above and beyond. And this is often what we can do, right? We can take that one person that has criticized our work or our business, and we can suddenly start wanting to reshape the whole thing just to please them. And it gives it a huge amount of power. And I remember this girl turning around to me one night after a few too many BK cherries that we drank back in the day and saying, "I know why I don't like you." And I remember thinking, I flipping knew you didn't. She said, it's because you remind me of my cousin who wasn't very nice to me. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have tried to do so many things to make you like me, but not looking like your cousin that I didn't even know existed is not something within my control. And it
Yeah.
was wonderful because it was actually just this real light bulb moment of, gosh, it really is nothing that I can do or to do with me at all. So actually, we're far better in thinking, okay, that's an opinion. Sure. Let me turn my focus instead to those that are enjoying, affirming, buying my product, friends that actually clearly enjoy my company, people that accept me even when they see me at my worst. Those are the opinions that matter.
And surely you don't want everyone to like you, because then
No.
in some way you're masking your own personality, or you're not being true to yourself because you're then just trying to fit in with everybody else's expectations, or,
Yeah.
and you're not standing out in any way.
Yeah, you start manipulating what you're putting out into the world to try and be palatable to like the universe, when actually what would that even look like? It would be, I was going to say beige, but a lot of people don't even like beige. And there was a quote going around on social media that says, not everyone's going to like you. You're not a jar of Nutella. And I was there thinking, I don't even like Nutella. I don't like it. It's not for me. So even Nutella, the apparently universal loved, toast spread, can't please everyone. So yeah, instead of just trying to manipulate and contort and control what you put out in the world, which ends up being something that probably you don't even like because it's not you, it's knowing that, yeah, you're not here to be universally palatable. I think you'd probably just have to hide in a cave, to be honest, if you didn't want anyone to have a negative opinion of you. It just isn't. Yeah, we can't exist and be liked by everyone.
And how can, if people want to dive deeper into some of what we've talked about, obviously there are the books that they can buy, which I'll link in the show notes. But how can people work with you?
Just come onto my social media and either drop me a DM or just drop me an email. I've got loads of courses and resources that I've created along the way. Lots about anxiety, self-esteem, self-worth, all of these things. I've written books and I've got a podcast that I'm not doing at the minute, but there's hundreds of episodes on there called The Therapy Edit. So there's lots out there, but obviously Instagram tends to be the hub of where to find it all.
Right. Well, they will all be linked in the show notes. And Anna, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your wisdom and your advice. And I'll be back again next week with another great guest.
Thank you.